preach, and then we're going to go back into some worship time at the end. So I was going to do a little bit of an intro to Remembrance Sunday before that, but actually talk about it now. So this is actually a photo I took back in 2014. These are some ceramic poppies. They're on display at the Tower of London. So they're actually back again this year, first time since 2014. They're there till Tuesday. You can go and have a look at it. It's an amazing display which just shows the impact of wars over history. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Remembrance Sunday, this is a tradition that has been started in the UK. It originally started in 1918, 1 year after the end of the First World War. And as a country, we came together and said, actually, this is a really important moment. We should remember this. We don't want this to happen again. And so we're going to take a moment to remember the impact that had on our country and fight for it not happening again. Now, obviously, we know that there are still ongoing conflicts. There was another whole world war. But it is a really important moment, and I think it's, as a body of believers here, an important moment to pause and just stand together for peace and against those kind of conflicts. That's why we're doing this morning. And also I think it's kind of countercultural as well, which is what we're all about. The idea of pausing. I don't know how you felt, but 2 minutes just feels like a really long time just to stop doing anything, like not quickly checking your phone for notifications, having a quick scroll, like in silence, there's no music, there's nothing to distract you. In our modern world, there is an infinite number of distractions at our fingertips. There's infinite busyness. We never need to pause. And so actually taking these moments to pause is so important. And I think in our walk with Jesus as well, like this is important too, right? Just meditating, taking a moment to listen. What is he saying to you? Like maybe you feel like God doesn't speak to you very often. You don't hear his voice, but actually are you taking those moments to pause and have that silence and just listen to what he is saying? Because I know he is wanting to speak to you. So I pray that you hear something from God this morning. We are going to be talking on the topic of sacrifice. So obviously on Remembrance Sunday, we are talking about sacrifice from the point of view of soldiers who laid their lives down to fight for peace, to fight for protection. And we're going to talk about, well, how does remembering sacrifice change how we live today? Because the purpose of Remembrance Sunday isn't just to go, oh yeah, that happened a long time ago, that was really bad. But actually it's to change something today. So it should change how we live, it should change how we think about these conflicts, and actually drive us to action, say what can we do to stop conflict, to stop war. Like it's not enough just to go, yes, that happened, and I'm remembering that it happened, but we should be making a change off the back of it. So, Hello, yes. What is sacrifice? At its core, it's giving up something. Do the switch. So it's not just giving up something, because we give up things all the time, but it's giving up something that really costs us something or everything. So it's not something maybe we do regularly either. It's not something that takes place regularly in our lives. And I think actually when you look at the kind of the stories from these conflicts of the sacrifices that people make, like I know for me, it's very hard to comprehend what that looks like. And what would I do in that situation? Would I make that same sacrifice? And I don't think until you're in that place you would know. And it's not something we are in a place of regularly, thank God. We're also just going to look at what the Bible has to say about sacrifice. So today we are reading from Hebrews chapter 9. Should be a slide for it up here so you can follow along. You can follow along in your Bibles. Hebrews chapter 9, verses 24 to 28. I'm going to be reading from the ESV. So it says this. For Christ has entered to holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true things, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God on our behalf. Nor was it to offer himself repeatedly as the high priest enters the holy places every year with blood not his own. For then he would have to suffer repeatedly since the foundation of the world. But as it is, he has appeared once and for all at the end of the ages to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment, so Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those who eagerly await him. Okay, so we're going to just dig into this passage today and see what this has to say to us. So a little bit of background and context. This is coming from the book of Hebrews, which is a letter written to the Hebrews, the Jewish people living in Jerusalem and around. So to understand the significance of what's being said here, we kind of have to understand the cultural significance and the background of what they were doing, their practices, what it looked like in their culture. And sacrifice was a big part of their culture. So in fact, they had traditions going back over 1,300 years of these sacrifices, at least, probably even more. So it goes right back to Moses writing in Genesis. He wrote about Cain and Abel, and there we read about them doing sacrifices. So 1,300 years is kind of a crazy long time to think about. Like, we're thinking back 100 years to when the war happened. Like, this is so much more than that, and this is something that has been ingrained in their society as a practice they do every year on such a regular basis since then. So why were they doing these sacrifices? So since sin came into the world, we read about that again in Genesis, when Adam and Eve were in the garden. Since that sin came into the world and we have all sinned, that brought separation from God. And so the instruction from God to atone, to make right for those sins, was to use sacrifice as a pointer forwards to when that price would ultimately be paid. So the sacrifices themselves did not completely remove the sin, but they were an image of when that sin was going to be taken away. And in Leviticus, the first 7 chapters, in fact, whole 7 chapters are given to how this had to be done. There was a lot involved. It was costly. There was a lot of rigmarole you had to go through, all these different steps. You had to prepare yourself. There was lots of different types of offerings as well. There was burnt offerings, there was grain offerings, there was peace offerings, there was sin offerings, and there was guilt offerings. And they happened at different times a year and for different reasons. And ultimately, all of these things symbolized cleaning, the taking away of the sins. So, forward again, back into Hebrews, you can kind of now see why this is culturally so significant. This is something they've been doing as long as anyone could remember, like over generations and generations, handed down as this is something you have to do, this is so important. And now, this is saying, actually, no, we don't have to do it. Why don't we have to do it anymore? Because actually, there were prophecies foretold that this would happen, and they have now come true. Like, no longer do we have to do this thing pointing forward to a time when we can be back in relationship to God. In fact, it has already happened in Jesus, and therefore we don't have to keep going through this same pattern in preparation. So we've moved from a place of having to do this thing which is symbolism to moving to a place where Jesus has fulfilled it. He was the embodiment of that sacrifice, of that picture. So this is a free gift. There was no longer kind of this costly thing they had to go and do, finding an animal, sacrificing it. Jesus had already done this. It was now finished. And so off the back of that as well, the real good news of that is that no longer were they looking forward to a time when this was completed, but actually we can now live in a place where we can know and walk with the Father. So I hope this is making some sense to you. Yes. Awesome. So I'm actually just going to pause, and we are going to also watch a video, which I think summarizes so well. And I watched this a month or so ago, and it just brought fresh clarity to it. So we're going to pause, we're going to watch that, and then we'll come back and resume.
We all long for the world to be good, for people to live in peace, act with love and justice. But there's a problem. Something compels us humans to constantly wreak havoc and destruction instead, and we call this evil.
And from the Bible's point of view, evil ruins things in at least two ways. There's a direct effect of our evil, like when someone steals from another person, they've created injustice.
Yeah, therefore, they owe something to make it right.
But there's another indirect effect of evil, because they've also ruined the environment of the relationship, creating a lack of trust, there's emotional damage. It's like vandalism, and they need to make that right too.
Now, many people believe, hey, God is good, he should be the one to just get rid of all the evil in the world.
But let's be honest, the evil that I see everywhere out there, it's the same evil that's inside of me. We have all contributed, and we keep doing it.
And so this kind of puts us in a bind. If God's going to rid the world of evil, he'll have to get rid of us.
And this is what's so remarkable about the story of the Bible. This God is so good that not only is he going to rid the world of evil, he's going to do it without destroying humanity.
So how is he going to do that?
Well, early in the story of the Bible, we're introduced to this practice of animal sacrifice, which I know, it seems weird to us, but for the Israelites, it was a very powerful symbol of God's justice and of his grace. So remember, I'm a contributor to the evil that's in the world. I should be removed. But God is allowing this animal's life to be a substitute. It's symbolically dying in my place. And the biblical word for this is atonement, which means to cover over someone's debt. But there's a second part to this ritual. Remember, evil also causes this relational vandalism. And in the Bible, this idea is described as polluting or defiling the land and making it unclean. So the priest would symbolically wash away the vandalism by sprinkling the animal's blood in different parts of the temple.
So the animal's blood is cleaning things?
Well, remember, this is a symbol, and it's a symbol that we're not used to. The blood represents life. And the sprinkling of the blood is this representation of how God is cleaning away these indirect consequences of evil in their community. In the Bible, this process is called purification. And so the temple and the land now become a clean space where God and his people can live together in peace.
So this ritual makes things right between Israel and God.
And more than that, the Israelites experience God's love and his grace through these symbols. And by being forgiven, ideally, this would compel them to become people of love and grace too.
Right, that's the ideal, but it wasn't always happening.
Right. So the prophet Isaiah, for example, he talks a lot about this. He opens his book by saying that the continual sacrifices of the Israelites had become meaningless because they were also allowing great evil in their midst, ignoring the poor and the oppressed. Even the Israelite kings were distorting justice. But Isaiah looked forward to a day when a new king from the line of David would come and deal with evil, but in a surprising way. The king would become a servant, and not just serve, but also suffer and die for the evil committed by his own people. And his life would be offered as a sacrifice.
And this is the promise Jesus believed he was fulfilling. He's the King of Israel, suffering and dying on the cross.
In fact, Jesus himself used Isaiah's words when he said that he came to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. And that word ransom refers to his sacrifice of atonement. And so all over the New Testament, we hear about how Jesus' death was an atoning sacrifice for us. It covered the debt that humans owe God for contributing to all of the evil and death in his world. But the New Testament authors also talk about Jesus' death as providing purification. And so we hear about Jesus' blood as a symbol of his life, having this ability to wash away the vandalism that evil has caused in us and around us so we can now live at peace with God.
So that's the meaning behind Jesus' death. But there's more to the story.
Yeah, the New Testament makes this powerful claim that Jesus' death was not final. He rose from the dead. And so he's the sacrifice who broke the power of death and evil, which means that he lives on to offer his life to anyone who will accept it. He is the perfect sacrifice to which all the previous sacrifices were pointing all along.
So because of Jesus, the early Christians stopped participating in the ritual of animal sacrifice.
But they were given new rituals. There are two that Jesus taught his followers to perform. The first is called baptism. Just as Jesus died, so going into the water becomes this personal connection you now have to his death. And in coming out of the water, you, so to speak, come back to life with Jesus. So baptism is the sacred ritual that joins your story to Jesus' death and his resurrection. The second ritual is called the Lord's Supper, which is a reenactment of Jesus' last meal with his disciples, and he used bread and wine to portray his coming death as a sacrifice. And so now, followers of Jesus, they take the bread and the cup regularly to remember and to participate in the power of Jesus' death and in his life.
So these rituals, they remind us of God's love and encourage us to live a life of love and grace.
But they do more than that. They connect us to a new life source. The very power that brought Jesus back from the dead is the same power that can deal with the evil in our own lives and transform us into people who lead lives of love and peace.
Awesome. So, off the back of that video, there was two responses that it called us to. Don't know if you caught them. Number one, baptism. And then number two, communion. If you are visiting us here, or you wouldn't call yourself a follower of Jesus yet, baptism is kind of the first decision when we kind of have that revelation of who Jesus is and we actually go, yes, I want to follow him. That is what we do. We go and we get baptized. I would encourage you, if this is something you're hearing for the first time, or maybe you've heard it a lot of times, but you feel Jesus saying something to you, I would encourage you to find someone. After the service, maybe, there'll be people down here praying. Come and talk to someone about that. Make that decision. That's between you and God. And then, if you've made that decision, go and get baptized. We do baptisms here from time to time, and we can absolutely make that happen. Now, if you are a believer, the second thing it called us to do, that Jesus instructs us to do, is to share in the Lord's Supper. Come to the Lord's table, have communion, as we call it. And so we're going to pause, and we're just going to do that right now, just to say, yes, Jesus, we are going to do that. So we no longer have to do these sacrifices, but we do communion. We are baptized, and then we do communion. So we are going to take a pause, and we're going to have communion together.